Support for Radio Friends comes from Columbia Healthy Smiles, the dental office of husband and wife team Dr. Batson and Dr. Abe, offering comprehensive and customized care to patients of all ages. Learn more by calling 573-721-9039 or online at www.columbiahealthysmiles.com. Good morning. Welcome to Radio Friends on St. Patrick's Day, March the 17th. Here we are. And I got on my green sweater, and Larry Brown is over there 7.5 feet away. And you've got that's a green shirt, isn't it?
Yes, it's green.
Yeah, okay.
Top of the morning to you.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. And you got your hair cut, and you got your beard trim.
Spring is in the air.
All right. So you have a St. Patrick's Day story you're going to share with us.
A traditional Irish tale.
Okay.
Yes.
You ready? Does it have a name?
Yes. The Radiant Boy.
The Radiant Boy.
Yes.
Okay. So here is Larry Brown on St. Patrick's Day with a tribute to the day, the Radiant Boy. Larry?
Now, there are many versions of this story in oral and written Irish tradition. In fact, one is a personal account given to Sir Walter Raleigh. Now, the version that I'm largely dependent upon is one that you will find in W.B. Yeats' collection, Fairy and Folk Tales of Ireland, and attributed to Mrs. Crowe. In 1793, Captain Robert Stewart was 24 years old. Now, later he would become the Viscount Castlereagh, but he was from Ulster, but while in the Irish military had been assigned at a place in County Donegal, Ballyshannon. And it was his habit when he was stationed somewhere to take his time off duty to hunt local wild game. And so it was the case on this particular day, but that day turned into a very stormy and awful day that forced him to take shelter. Well, he found a country estate, and when he asked if he might be able to spend the night, he was met by the owner of the estate and became his host and said, "We have lots of guests, but you're welcome to stay here." And, Stewart accepted the offer. And in fact, when the butler came to ask where he wanted to be, he said, it's very crowded, but Stewart said, "Put me anywhere." Well, the butler took his gun and his cloak and his bag that he had with him and then took him to this large hall where there was food and something to drink and pleasant company. Well, the place was very crowded, but yet it was a good party. And the conversation was rolling along, and the host came up to Stewart and said, "You're welcome to stay here for a couple of days, and I will promise good hunting." Well, Stewart said he would consider that, but he was at that point just grateful to have a place for the night. Well, as the conversation and enjoyment continued, it began late and people were turning in, and so he asked the butler to take him to his room. And the butler took him to a fairly large bedroom, but it was empty. No furniture, and a blazing fire and some blankets. Well, it was late and he was tired and those blankets looked inviting, but he noticed the fire was so big that he decided to remove some of the unburned logs from the fire and then settled in and went to sleep. But within a couple of hours, he was awakened, not by sound, but by a bright light that seemed to be emanating from the fireplace. Well, as he sat up, he assumed that the fire was blazing up. But no, the fire had gone out, and in its place was a young boy standing there, a boy that seemed to just effervesce. There was a radiance that just came out from that boy that filled the room. And for a while, Stewart was speechless, and the boy looked directly at him and then faded away. Now, Stewart was not thinking that this was some spiritual phenomena, but rather that someone had played a rather cruel trick on him. But after he settled down, he went back to sleep. When morning came, he got up, he got dressed, he got his material, and he headed into the great hall, and there everyone was gathering and having some breakfast, and he was rather indignant. In fact, he stepped into the room and announced he was leaving immediately. Well, the host went up to him and said, he was taken aback. He said, "What's wrong?" He said, I promised you a couple of days here and good hunting, and what seems to be the trouble?" Well, Stewart pulled him aside and did not give him the details, but he said, "I have been a victim of some cruel trick." Well, the host thought, perhaps, and all of the guests that were here that night, that indeed there was a trickster. But when he interviewed everyone denied doing anything. And then the host thought, and called his butler. "Hamilton, where did you put Captain Stewart?" And the butler came forward and says, there were 3 or 4 people to every room, and Stewart said put him anywhere, and I put him in the boys' room. But I made sure that the fire was blazing to keep him away. And the master said, "Well, you're wrong. I told you not to put anyone in that room. That's why we removed all of the furniture." Well, then the host turned to Stewart and explained. He said, I have to tell you that there is a legend that occasionally that a radiant boy is seen. It's believed that he might be the ghost of some murdered child. But sadly, I have to tell you that anyone who has viewed the radiant boy will, in the peak of their career, of their life and their power, will die a violent death. Well, Robert Stewart wanted to dismiss it, but that experience would be with him the rest of his life. Now, the postscript. You see, Stewart did go on to become rather famous. In fact, he was the primary secretary, the chief secretary of the country of Ireland. And he was a part of the negotiation in 1800, the Plan of Union, that dissolved Irish independence and merged them into Great Britain. He went on to become the Foreign Secretary of Great Britain during the Napoleonic Wars. And he was believed by some to be a great international politician, but he was despised by others for his treatment of the Irish, and particularly his involvement in the Peterloo Massacre. It was the poet Lord Byron who ridiculed him viciously, and Percy Shelley, who also viciously attacked him in his treatise called The Mark of Anarchy. And wouldn't you know it, but in 1822, at the peak of his career, he took his own life. Well, as for the Radiant Boy, you'll find that story around in lots of castles in Ireland, and people will say, sometimes it's called the Goblin Child, the one who was murdered, perhaps, by a parent.
So this is a true story.
Well, it is one of those stories that those like Stewart admitted it happened.
A lot of those stories...
But it's an Irish tale.
Yeah. Yes, but a lot of those are steeped in facts, too, things that did happen. Larry Brown, thank you so much. brownstory@hotmail.com if you want to contact Larry. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you.
And to you
thank
as
you
well.
for sharing part of your day with us. Okay? See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.